Alright guys, Satchgobit here today, and today is Sunday, but I'm recording this a few days in advance because I'm away this weekend, so I thought in order to keep the daily upload streak going, I would record this video in advance of the present day. So that probably means that I might be missing a lot of news that's going on right now. That's unfortunate. I'll try and cover that when I get back later this week. But yes, today I wanted to talk about, is another Dynasty roster in Call of Duty even possible? Now, I don't really want to talk about necessarily which Dynasty was better, because that's definitely up for consideration here, and I'm sure you guys can discuss that at length in the comments section below. But I really wanted to think that, given Fort Worth has just happened and Luminosity Gaming have come out with the victory, is it even possible in Call of Duty that we see another roster that lasts the test of time, winning, I guess, the majority of tournaments? So if you guys aren't aware of exactly what the Dynasty rosters kind of mean and how we've seen them in the past, effectively there's two Dynasty lineups, which a lot of people are, pretty confident that, okay, those are the two Dynasties. You've got the Complexity Dynasty of Black Ops 2 to Ghosts, and then you have the OpTic Gaming Dynasty of late Advanced Warfare through Black Ops 3 and then through Infinite Warfare. So that was definitely a longer one, but they had less, they weren't winning every tournament like Complexity were. We'll have a look at that in a second. Leave a like if you guys enjoy it, I'd really appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new as always, of course. And let's hop right into this one. So these are the latest results at the Fort Worth event. Very different indeed to how things ended up turning out at CWL Vegas, where OpTic Gaming won the championship with the same lineup as here. Luminosity were 4th, Splice were 3rd, and United, who were 2nd at that event, at this event were all the way down in 16th. So things are very changeable in Call of Duty, and I guess I can start with the fact that this question has kind of been considered in the Counter-Strike scene as well. I don't know too much about other esports apart from Counter-Strike, but in Counter-Strike a lot of people for a relatively long time have been saying that, well, a lot of years, the past few years, many teams were doing incredibly well, and there's this thing called the Intel Grand Slam where you had to win 4 trophies out of the last 10 Intel sponsored events or whatever, and yeah, if you won 4 then you won $1 million. Now of course 4 out of 10 seems pretty reasonable in Call of Duty standpoints for the best team in the game, but that took a really long time to be achieved in Counter-Strike because so many teams are very good. But now there's been this emergence over the last few months or so, well, over the last year, I guess, of Astralis being an absolute powerhouse who cannot be defeated effectively at all costs. So there's something that goes against the grain. I guess you could say on that regard that Counter-Strike is a very skillful game. It's very, you can max out how good you are at it. Astralis have almost perfected it, I guess you could say, in terms of how efficient they are at playing the game and how good they are individually. And something like a Call of Duty, maybe that doesn't have the same tactical depth to the point where whoever plays better on the weekends to some degree is going to be the team that ends up taking home the trophy. So that's one thing for consideration as we go forward. But let's have a look at some of these Dynasty lineups. So here I'm looking at Aches' career. So of course Aches was part of the Complexity Dynasty, very legendary player, of course, won the most recent World Championships here in World War II. So this is his career. Let's have a look at this Complexity Dynasty as it were. So they joined Complexity back in, the start of Black Ops 2 here. Aches, Crim6 and TP were with them the entire year. And then after they come forth at the Black Ops 2 World Championship, where Fariko Impact won, then their run really started when they acquired Clayster and Mixter X as coach. If you want to compare the two dynasties in terms of Complexity and OpTic Gaming, a lot of things have been said, because OpTic Gaming weren't as dominant, you could say. I mean, look at this run here. From Black Ops 2, this is of course only LAN tournaments, all the way through, midway through Ghosts. They literally win, basically every tournament, and if not, they come second and they make finals. Of course, it's crowned off, really, by the victory at the Call of Duty World Championship. At this point, they did have Karma on the team, so, well, 3 out of 4 of the players on the roster were maintained, including the coach, so I would say that's still enough to qualify as the continuation of the dynasty with Karma on the team instead of Clayster. Of course, there's a lot of things behind the scenes as to why that change took place. Of course, when they moved over to Evil Geniuses, well, a lot of things have come out around that as of late, and yes, so this is the dynasty, effectively. All these victories up here, really until the start of, halfway through Ghost, when they went to Evil Geniuses, that's where things really started to fall apart. And at this Gfinity 3 event, they switch out Karma again for Dida. I think Karma left, or, something was going on, given that Evil Geniuses, they couldn't pay the money that they were owed, and Karma was just having a kid at the time, having Bella, so he really needed the money, so he ended up leaving to go to FaZe Clan, I think, and then soon after that, went on to OpTic Gaming. So having a look at the same thing from Karma's perspective is really remarkable. What a tenured player player Karma is here. How he wins the World Championship where Aches and Complexity came fourth, obviously struggles through this period of absolute dominance by Complexity, then he joins them, goes on to join FaZe Clan after that after winning the World Championships, and then within a couple of months onto this OpTic Gaming lineup, which, well, starts the next dynasty, I guess. So as you can see here, the ones are spread out a fair bit more than that we've seen in this Complexity lineup, but of course, a very dominant squad. Scump, Formal, Crimsix, and Karma, legendary lineup throughout the latter half of Advanced Warfare. They were unbelievably good since Karma joined the team, of course, when Nadeshot left after they came top 8 at the CWL World Championships in Advanced Warfare. They do very well through the rest of the season, making finals with FaZe Clan really and winning the majority of the events. Then they go into Black Ops 3, they have a fantastic year overall, they win Orlando, they win Anaheim, they win ESWC in particular, Stage 1 playoffs as well they walked away with, but the Stage 2 playoffs and the World Championship really soured this year. Considering what we'd just seen a couple of years ago with this Complexity lineup being absolutely dominant, winning the World Championship but also winning all the other tournaments, we have this situation here where OpTic had been good the most of the season, but then Envy at the end after winning Stage 2 playoffs and also winning the World Championship, people are thinking, well, who really was the better team over this period, especially given OpTic, they came top 8 at both of these events. So, well, it's not exactly coming seconds like the Complexity team would always do. Of course, one thing to consider here is that the competition during this period is arguably much greater. I don't think a lot of people would doubt that. But there is an interesting thing that Karma had to say here about this team.
I think that you are a good judge to say who, in your opinion, is the best, or the best team that's ever existed in Call of Duty.
Definitely Cole.
Complexity? Yeah, the period.
I mean, these teams, like this team currently, the team before, we could have been that, but like playing smart.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily like the amount of championships that you won. You're saying that Complexity played the smartest and the most correct Call of Duty out of all the teams.
Yeah, everyone did their job.
So Karma still reckons that the Complexity lineup was better overall than the OpTic one. I'm sure you guys will have some thoughts on that in the comment section below. And then as we move upwards here, after the CWL World Championship in Black Ops 3 in 2016 where they were defeated, they had a pretty rough start to Infinite Warfare. At Las Vegas it wasn't so good. Scump, I think, had his first negative event here in about 3 years or something ridiculous like that. Then they come second at Atlanta to none other than E-United, and then they really get back on, well, the trek that we expect to see from this Dynasty roster. Of course, they were having some behind-the-scenes troubles for sure, but they win Paris, they win Dallas, then they, have a couple of lackluster events, but they bring it back very strong at the end in Stage 2 and Champs, of course, cementing the Dynasty at CWL Champs, as Courage famously said in the video clip I'm about to show you.
No ground given now as Karma finds another two-piece. Here's the overdrive. Popped as he's just trying to back him up. Make it on the plays is Crimsix. The curse has been broken. The dynasty has been cemented. They are the greatest roster in Call of Duty history. OpTic Gaming are officially the Call of Duty World League champions.
I'm sure that'll bring a lot of good memories back for you OpTic Gaming fans, but going into the World War II season, of course, this is where things really took a turn for the worst, and, well, the internal turmoil, I guess, within this squad, largely, I think, between Scump and Formal, and also, to Karma to some degree. It's been talked a lot about it. I don't want to go too in-depth about that today. Hopefully, we get more of that Eavesdrop podcast stuff that we saw from Hex. If you're not aware of the Eavesdrop podcast, and I'm sure you are, I'll leave that clip and the relevant podcast linked down in the description box below. And, of course, that top 16 finish at CDBL Seattle spelled the end of this lineup. So a lot of people would suggest the Dynasty really went from, back in Advanced Warfare, where they won UMG California, all the way through to the World Championship of 2017. That wasn't as dominant a dynasty as the Complexity one was, but of course a lot of people would suggest they had greater competition, in addition to the fact that because it lasted longer, you wouldn't expect them to win every single event. So effectively, those are the two dynasties that are under consideration here. Karma, of course, has been on the both of them. Now, going into Black Ops 4, I'm not saying I sided with this, but after OpTic Gaming won Vegas in a very dominant fashion, I think it was something like 24-5 in terms of overall map count, which is really unprecedented. Of course, Dashi was just the second coming of Christ at that event. He had like a 2.2 in search, 1.4 or something like that overall in the entire event. I did hear some of the casters suggesting that, you know, OpTic Gaming are trying to build another Dynasty lineup here. And I thought that was an interesting comment, and I'm sure a lot of people coming into Fort Worth would, you know, I think pretty sure most people saw OpTic Gaming as favourites once again. Not to say that they won't necessarily go on and win the next 5 events of the season. Who knows exactly what this OpTic Gaming lineup is capable of. But considering the fashion that they went out at Fort Worth, it does beg the question as to whether a team like this is really possible yet again. Of course, Complexity way back in the day, they wouldn't win one tournament come top 12 the next. Of course, the level of competition now is rather different, but an OpTic Gaming team losing in pools twice to the likes of Envious and of course to the likes of Reciprocity, and then going on to lose to Gen G in the bracket is something that a Dynasty team isn't really going to do. Now, whether this is something that wouldn't happen to other teams is of course up in the air for sure. But that's my question to you guys. Is it possible to form a Dynasty team anymore? I think in Black Ops 4, I doubt it is. This game, as I was talking about Counter-Strike a second ago, I don't really think there's enough strategic and tactical depth to mean that one team can be on top for a long period of time. It largely is who prepares the best, who plays the best on the weekend out of a pool of very good teams at the top that could all beat each other and go to a game 5 with each other on the given day. So it's difficult to give favourites anymore at this point, and well, the idea that potentially another Dynasty roster could form, which is over, well, a couple of different Call of Duties a team could be dominant for, is tough to say indeed. Of course, we had the Rise, not necessarily an era, but throughout the World War II season, of course, Rise were definitely, well, I guess, yeah, arguably the best team throughout the game. Of course, Team Caliber, you could suggest for the early part of the game, but towards the end, Rise Nation, you probably have to give the benefit of the doubt to, but of course, that top 16 placing at the champs, and obviously it was only over one Call of Duty. So even this performance from Rise, as you can see right here, winning 3 events over the course of the season and coming second at Stage 2 playoffs, that's nowhere near enough to qualify as any sort of Dynasty in terms of what we've seen in the past. And Rise Nation, of course, had a very good season, and so did Team Caliber. The fact that another team might come along, especially in a 5v5 setting where arguably things are more chaotic, is very difficult to buy indeed, because even if you get as much success as a Rise Nation, you're nowhere near a Dynasty lineup, because that has to last over multiple Call of Duties. You really need a next level of talent and team play and, well, great backing, and also probably some slightly lackluster competition in order to achieve these sort of long stretches over multiple Call of Duties, which are constantly changing exactly who's the best team because of multiple different metas coming into play. Something like Counter-Strike is, you know, the meta is established over a relatively long period of time. Of course, recently we've got this all coming into play, but a lot of the things in the game are very similar over a long period of time. So it makes more sense that eras and dynasties have the potential to be established, whereas in Call of Duty, to me, it doesn't seem that possible. With new players coming up all the time and so many different talented players in the leagues and the potential for roster changes all over the place to quickly dethrone the team on top. In something like Counter-Strike, roster changes are few and far between, don't happen too often. In Call of Duty, we have 3 in the space of about 4 months or something like that. So if a team is being super good, it's definitely possible that the other squads can switch up their players, and, you know, there's a lot of money going around nowadays to try and dethrone whatever the best team in the game might be at the current time. Right now, you're going to say LG, but would I favour LG or the field in the next event? Definitely the field, no questions asked. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. One thought I had is if it's ever possible that we get a Call of Duty game introduced, which is the competitive Call of Duty game. Maybe they remaster Black Ops 2, maybe they mix Black Ops 2 and with some other features of some other games, and we get a Call of Duty game that lasts for, say, 5 years for the competitive scene before we get a new one. It's definitely a fantasy at the time being, wishful thinking to some degree. In that sort of scenario, it's possible, I think, that another Dynasty roster gets formed. But the idea that we have a team that is super dominant over multiple back-to-back titles, well, at least 2 titles, winning the majority of the events, seems very unlikely to me at the current time. But I'm sure you guys will leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. In my opinion, it just seems like there's too much talent in the scene right now. So like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next time.